you know what, Luke? This is how bad it is, and this is how badly the Texans got outclassed last night. I woke up this morning after a couple of hours of sleep, and I wanted to read a couple of quick articles and, reflecting on some of the things that the broadcasters were saying at the end of the game. I have no appetite right now for saying something like, well, the Texans' defense played well enough to win the game. No, they didn't. They did not. They got you garbage turnovers. They did some good things, but they allowed this Texans team after a bye week showed up, and on the defense on the first two drives of the game allowed a 70-plus yard touchdown drive, and then on the next drive they allowed an 80-plus yard touchdown drive. They allowed three touchdown drives in the Seahawks' first four possessions. The third one was on a short field, albeit, but a field goal is you can't do that when you've got an offense that is just so pathetically not on the same level as the Seahawks that they really shouldn't have even been allowed in the building. They should have gone. I wish the Seahawks had gone all Dave Portnoy on them and not allowed the Texans offense in the building, the way Ohio State didn't allow Dave Portnoy in the building. When you're worried about whether your team is really truly ready to crack that glass ceiling and be in the upper echelon of teams in the NFL, they couldn't have been more generous in giving us a conclusive answer on this. What a horrible performance. And I'm not excusing the defense. Not when you're supposed to have this awesome set of cornerbacks that, they're disrespected by the national media. You let Jaxon Smith-Njigba do exactly the same thing that Jaxon Smith-Njigba is doing to every other defense that they faced this year. No, unacceptable.
Yeah, certainly unacceptable. We got the next 4 hours to break it down. We're also here for you as well, the Texans fan. 713-572-4610 to text the show. You can also get to us on YouTube and Twitch as well. We can act as that proverbial couch for you in the therapist office today because the messages are already rolling in as soon as we hit the air. Saying Texans suck in all capitals. Nick Caley is trash. CJ is regressing by the minute. That was painful to watch. Awful game, awful coach, awful quarterback. 7-10 is our ceiling. These are some of the messages coming in the last couple of moments here from you Texans fans listening out there. Appreciate you waking up all night after that game last night and still unable to go to bed because of just how pitiful of a performance it was. Not as close as the final score indicates, right? I would say that. And to me, it's fitting that it's today because I think it's Rocket season now for me, to be honest with you. This is NBA season. I'm sorry to the Texans. I know it's early enough in the year to turn things around, but when you're 2-4 and the 4 losses have come against the 4 good teams you have faced and the offense has looked as pitiful in those 4 games, averaging 15 points per game against the 4 good teams you've played, it's why I said this was the last chance last night for me to buy into what this team can accomplish this year because if you can't win these games and you play as poorly as you did last night on primetime, there's no reason for me to ever believe that suddenly next 3 games against 3 winning teams, they're just going to come out, flip a switch, and start playing winning football against good teams.
If the most distressing thing about last night is that at least in the first 3 games, you could say, all right, well, if the offense gets it going, then they were down to the wire in those 3 games. And all you needed is a little bit of advancement or improvement by the offense and some clutch plays by the defense in the fourth quarter of those first 3 games. And maybe you actually win those games. And it feels like they've taken a definitive step backwards. And I guess the only thing I'm thinking about is, yeah, they're not ready for prime time, but noon at Sunday, hey, this team shows up. When it's noon on a Sunday and you're playing at home, you got a real chance. And could you beat Mac Jones if that's who the quarterback ends up being? The offensive line just getting so physically manhandled by a really good defensive line. We talked about it all week long about how physical the Seahawks defensive line is, but they had no answers. And there's a part of me that wants to give Nick Caley a little bit of an excuse in that, all right, they can't pass protect, they can't run block. What exactly is the proper play call? But every time in short yardage situations when he decides to just run, get stuffed at the line of scrimmage and then just decide to run it right back, doing the same thing the next play, I have a really, really hard time feeling like he's not just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. It's just, there's nothing about the offense right now, including C.J. Stroud, who that gives me any kind of confidence versus the better teams in the NFL.
2 for 15 on third down, 1 for 4 on fourth down. Throw that in there as well. I mean, they got some garbage yards late in the game, but there was a point there in the fourth quarter where they had about 150 total yards of offense before a couple of those late drives that got them an extra 100 yards. We'll zero more in on Stroud a little bit later on, but to your point on Caley in this offense, well, first off, we certainly got our answer. We've been wondering the last 2 weeks, how much can we take from those last 2 wins? How much of that was the opponent? How much of that was the Texans improving? And I think we clearly got our answer that those 2 games were pretty meaningless. This team seemed to wriggly last night. And to your point about Mac Jones, I mean, when you look back, they beat Cam Ward and they beat Cooper Rush were the 2 quarterbacks they were able to beat. And when they've played some better quarterbacks, Stafford, Baker, last night, Sam Darnold now, it's hard to believe, but he's playing in that category of the better quarterbacks in the league. You know, that's where the Texans have lost these games, and the offenses have not looked nearly as good against teams that don't have 2 of the worst defenses in the league. So first off, we certainly answered the question after 15 days of wondering that was more about the opponents and the Texans actually apparently improving.
Right. And the biggest thing, too, is, and I'm probably going to harp on the defense more than I should because they did do some good things in that game last night. Danico Autry specifically did some really good things in that game. But that Azeez Al-Shire hit on the second series, which ended up being a touchdown, but could have been the series could have been stopped right there. They were in field goal position there, I believe. But there's Azeez Al-Shire doesn't get the benefit of the doubt anymore. I mean, I saw people making an argument that, hey, he had made contact inbounds, and hey, but what about Sam Darnold had his hand on Azeez Al-Shire's shoulder pad? Are you serious? Are we going to give Azeez Al-Shire the benefit of the doubt on a late hit out of bounds? No. He's an habitual line stepper, and it's been established as such, but he's supposed to be the guy who's the leader of the team, and oh my gosh, he's such an incredible dude, and it is. He's impressive in a lot of regards, but they've got a lack of discipline on it. They cannot afford to do those things when you're relying on that part of the team, that side of the ball, to be the strength that carries you through whatever struggles they're having on offense. For me, Luke, my biggest overall takeaway after the first half and at the end of the game was just that the Seahawks team is so much better coached. In so many ways, the level of execution by the offense, the level of execution by their defense, they're just a more polished and more professional football team. And I know there's almost no level of the team, unless you can think of one right now, that I feel good about after that game, other than the defense's ability to create big plays. But some of those plays, I look at them almost like the same as garbage time production out of an offense. Like, all right, you did all those things after you had already committed the original sin of allowing 3 touchdowns on the first 4 series.
Yeah, I'm with you on the coaching. That was my biggest takeaway. That was what were you? You had 15 days to prepare, right? What were you doing that the offense took that big of a step back? And also, I mean, D'Amico Ryans. I don't get what they were doing at the end of the game. Chose not to kick an onside kick it deep, didn't kick it out of bounds, let the Seahawks return it to waste the 2-minute warning. You only have 1 timeout remaining, and then it's a fitting end where I don't know if I necessarily agreed with the call. But it's a fitting end with the way the Texans played last night to have that game end on the penalty of Settle jumping on the pile.
Talk about lack of discipline again. You wonder why they didn't kick it out of bounds there. They ignored the instructions of his coach, apparently. So that's where we'll hear from D'Amico in the next segment. But from what I can tell, that he answered that he was supposed to kick it out of bounds there. So just a complete breakdown. Every step along the way from the top of the organization on down. Nick Caserio will not escape our scrutiny this morning because that offensive line, this rotation at left guard, where apparently we're going to take the first half of the season to figure out if who or if they even have a good left guard in there. All of these things are things that, a lot of people listening right now could have seen from a mile away. And I deluded myself into thinking that the offensive line, look, they can be better than they were last year as long as they're well coached and as long as everybody's on the same page. And that's not what it looked like last night. They were not ready. I don't know which part of the team was ready to go at kickoff. Was there a part of that? I mean, but like, hey, Dave, we get Braxton Berrios back.
Yeah.
Let's just go ahead and throw him out there. He's a former All-Pro. He doesn't know. I was just glad when he caught the ball as a returner. Meanwhile, Jalen Noel is showing up at times during the game. Who do I give a game ball to? Danico Autry, I guess. Is that who? Did you know who they made the player of the game?
Yeah, I don't know.
The post game.
No, I don't. I was looking at just even the box score before I went to bed last night, thinking like, who actually played well? The only guy I honestly thought, at least on the offensive side, was Dalton Schultz. I think he had as many receptions as targets. Every time they threw the ball to him, it was something successful. That was about it. Otherwise, Danico Autry, special teams makes another somewhat of a big play, blocking the kick, but that's about it.
Yeah, it was Danico Autry, too.
Right.
That was pretty much entirely their whole, most of the highlights I can think of. I mean, Derek, honestly, the biggest surprise to me, honestly, was that Jackson Smith-Njigba just ran roughshod like he did. I thought that if anything, the Texans were going to be in danger of focusing so much on limiting Jackson Smith-Njigba that maybe they'd seep yardage elsewhere. But he was everything, and credit to him. I mean, he's a phenomenal receiver. I just didn't expect Kamari Lassiter and Derek Stingley to look so frozen in place. They just looked frozen at times, and the entire secondary just looked like they were caught by surprise by things. And I don't know. I feel like, they had 2 weeks to actually think about this stuff. I'm just a stupid old man. I'm just a guy on his couch trying not to fall asleep. But they looked as unprepared as I might have been if I were back there playing cornerback.
Yeah, which is what I don't get. You have that extra time. And look, I know this is a gambling stat, which is why I found it last week before the game, but it still speaks to teams playing better than even expected. Teams that are coming off 15 days of rest, which the Texans did, and are playing on the road like the Texans did, in 11 against the spread the last 20 years. Now, again, that's a gambling stat. That's just against the spread, not winning the games, but you're covering the spread almost 70% of the time. And if you're covering the spread, that means you're performing better than even expectations.
Right. So a lot of those teams won those games, or some of them probably won those games.
And the Texans were only 3-point underdogs last night. So if they were to fit that trend, they would most likely have won or lost by 1 or 2 points. And instead, they lost by more. They didn't cover the spread. They lost by nearly double digits in a game that, again, like I said, I don't think was even as close as that final score indicates. The Texans got a lot of breaks along the way. They made their own mistakes, the Texans did, but, the 2 safeties that weren't safeties, there was a strip sack of Stroud that because of a defensive hold got wiped out.
Yeah.
It could have been a lot worse.
Those 2 near safeties, which I like, and the second one was it took an engineering degree to figure out exactly what happened on all of that. That's the worst thing to feel lucky about. Like, we got a lucky break on what? A couple of near safeties. We almost actually allowed. I mean, I almost wanted to know. I wanted those safeties to happen. If I had known the Texans were definitely going to lose the game, I wanted those safeties to happen just to find out how rare it is in NFL history for there to be 2 safeties allowed in the first half of a football game. You know how rare a safety is?
I know it.
You know how rare it is? So rare. They hardly ever happened. And it felt like every other series the Texans were in danger of giving up a safety in that game. It was unbelievable.
It was the first night. They almost had 2 safeties.
You know which play, when we talk about the lack of discipline, the play that got me the most in the second half was when Derek Stingley got his interception. Stiff-arm Jackson Smith-Njigba, and he got flagged for it. I don't know, maybe I'm a grumpy old man. I thought you were allowed to stiff-arm. I don't think he grabbed the face mask or anything. He got up underneath it. But then Christian Harris shoving Jackson Smith-Njigba onto the bench is one of the weirder things I think I've seen in a football game. Like, what? Christian Harris, what? What are you doing? What the hell was that? Then you get the official. For any of you that fell asleep, it was one of the weirder things I've seen in a game where I already seen a bunch of weird stuff. Like, the official puts his arms around Jackson Smith and Jigba so he can guard him from all the angry Texans on the sideline. It was weird. It was really weird.
It's something I've been saying since D'Amico got here. I mean, the undisciplined nature of this team. They were top 5 in penalties each of the last 2 years. They had, 10 penalties last night, over 100 penalty yards again. You know, and
this is a big day. This is a big day for people like you because of the told you so's. My God, do you think I can even check my mentions on X today? No. I think people reminding me. You know what? Somebody reminded me. I try not to get triggered on social media last night. And the weirder things, people can call me names and everything, and it doesn't really bother me. It's when people do things like point out the obvious, where I'm watching this football game, okay? I can see exactly what's going on. And tweets at me early in the game. You mentioned you were eager to see how Sting played after the bye. The 2 biggest plays on the offense have been made tonight. The Seattle offense has made tonight. Were both against Stingley. I'm like, yeah, I'm watching the football game. Okay, I understand what's going on here, Mister. Just say you told me so and leave it at that. You don't have to try to point it like he's giving me the play-by-play on what's going on out on the football field.
I know, that's kind of like a Magic Johnson tweet. How Magic Johnson always tweets just like the most obvious thing. He didn't even add any narrative of like, told you so, or you were. He just gave you the blow-by-blow like you weren't home.
He might as well have said, Seth, the Texans have 12 points at this point in the game, but only 6 of them were proffered by the Texans offense.
Yeah. Right. By the way, what stood out to me most about that whole sideline scuffle was the fact that most people probably didn't know. Tommy Townsend was trying to put his helmet on like 5 consecutive times, but he had a man bun, and he couldn't fit the helmet on, and he kept trying to adjust it while guys are scuffling over there so he could maybe get in the fray or just protect himself. And eventually he just, let go of the hair, let go of his man bun and let the hair flow and put the helmet on. And I was like, this is just indicative of the entire night where, guys are scuffling, and you got one of your players over here, can't even put his helmet on to get into the mess because of his man bun. It just, just nothing went right. It was a mess.
He had to set down his dream catcher and undo his man bun before he could get into the what the hell? What a frustrating football game.
It sure was. It sure was.
If any of you listening who didn't get to catch the second half, don't go on NFL.com and watch it. There's no need for you to even go watch the YouTube 15-minute highlight recap or anything. Everything that you needed to know about this football game you saw in the first quarter.